Hey, how's it going? Hey, how's it going? Here, look at some signs, please, before I get started. Oh, attached to the cord. That's as close as we're getting right now. Okay, so I am going to talk about the Netflix miniseries from 2017 entitled Godless. I'm going to include a trailer with information that you can look at. So there's not going to be anything on the board the way I used to do it. I've done this a couple of times. It's easier for me, so I am just going to talk and you can use your imagination. So this is one of those shows that I fully watched in its entirety, probably when it came out, and then it got buried under the avalanche of all the other crap I've looked at in between now and then. So I didn't realize when I rewatched it, when I started it recently, that I had already seen it. Oh my God, what did I just do to my notes? God, I can't believe I just got it in something, put it down in something wet and just totally tore it. Well, anyway, it's salvageable, but anyway. So I'm watching the show, and I had an idea that I might have already seen it when I started it. And gradually, as it went on, later into it than I thought I would figure it out, which was kind of disconcerting. I was like, wow, you had an idea you'd seen this, and it took you this long to realize that you had. But anyway, that and other arguments and recriminations with myself. And I don't know why I just let it go and it didn't fade into memory, but it came back. And I'm glad it did, because rewatching, I think we all know, dislodges stuff that, you know, like Easter eggs, like stuff we missed that is kind of pertinent to our understanding of the story, you know, of our perception. So, part of what made it kind of a bigger deal for me to watch too is because it stars Jeff Daniels, among other people, but hi. My cat decided to come up and join the party. So don't drink the aquafaba. Anyway, yeah, why don't you go up on the refrigerator? No? Okay. Okay, well, that was his appearance. So, Jeff Daniels has been a favorite of mine as an actor for a long time, and he has fallen victim to this sort of inattention thing that people have, where they just get an idea that they think something about an actor, and it's like it's all their weirdo perception. And what I'm referring to is the odd amount of people who cannot tell the difference between Jeff Daniels and Bill Pullman. Bill Pullman is from, like, this is an older movie. I don't know why this one came to mind. He's in more current films, but he was in a movie called The Serpent and the Rainbow, and I guess the real reason why I sort of lit on that is because I've recently had a cause in my life to consider voodoo more than sort of academically, and it's just funny the way, you know, our friends, the coincidences are so synchronous with our lives. So, okay, I now got lost. Oh, Jeff Daniels and Bill Pullman and The Serpent and the Rainbow. So that's the reason why I lit on that, I'm sure, is like a personal leaning type situation. And but anyway, they, especially when they were young, I guess vaguely resembled each other. It is a pitfall of the character actor that many of them have that sort of bland, more than passable, handsome appearance, and they gotta have something going charisma wise too. Like they gotta have charm that can be felt. But otherwise, they are kind of like a generic selection of people. And so I know a friend of mine would always, like, I'm pretty anal about remembering people's names and how to pronounce them, how to pronunciate them. That too. And this person, like many others, can never remember what the name is of the person that they want to talk about. So you got to go through this, like, I don't know, like detective game of what were they in? Well, what part did they play? Well, you got to get all these descriptions out of them and break down what they're trying to talk about to get to the core of who the hell are you talking about? So, and having the generic selection of blandly handsome, actors, it is kind of hard to distinguish one from the other if you're not anal about it like I am. Like, I totally get it. But I never got the Bill Pullman, Jeff Daniels thing. But I can also tell the difference between different black people. So somewhere in there lies the ability to, differentiate between people. It's not necessarily a racial thing. I think it's more of just like a paying attention to what you're looking at thing. Anyway, he's in it, Jeff Daniels, and I feel like he just doesn't quite get the props that he deserves. He does, though, like all the time, and he is not, he doesn't relegate his work to film. He's done some TV stuff, like he was in Aaron Sorkin's The Newsroom. That was a TV show that I wish never ended. Oh my God, so good, but it was a mini or limited or whatever. I always want more, but I guess that's how you want to end them. So that's a more recent thing that Jeff Daniels was in. And also he has recently, well, it's not that recent, but not too long ago, he got a lot of acclaim for his work in the Dumb and Dumber series, which, I mean, that's like absurdist humor, and I mean, you can look at it and see it a number of ways. It could be straight up slapstick, or it could just be like that, and interpretive genius and subliminal satire and all kinds of wonderful artistic la-di-da. But there is something more to it than just the base stupidity. So, okay, there are other people in this, so I'm just gonna look at the cast list over here. I guess you can look at that. I don't think that that's something that, well, you can't read it, so it doesn't matter. Anyways, the star at the top of it actually is an actor named Jack McConnell, and I have a feeling he's a Brit, and I don't know that for sure, so I'm just going to pause this while I take a look at that and see if my suspicion is correct. I cut it off before I finish the sentence. Okay, here I go looking. Come on, Dodo, do it right. I knew it. Jack O'Connell, who plays Roy Good, the star of Godless, is a Brit, and he is from Alveston, Derby, England. I never heard of Alveston before, but there's a lot I don't know about other countries. Okay, I was just looking over his bio. It doesn't necessarily have bearing on what I want to talk about. But he's a star. I have to commend the man, though. His accent hiding was very efficient. I did have to wonder, but it wasn't his voice that gave away that he might be British. It kind of was his appearance, but the other thing is I know there are lots of people from other countries hiding their true accents and tricking us. So now when I feel like this might be one, I look it up. I didn't before, but I don't think I planned to do this before. I think I just watched it and was like, oh, that was good. But it's going to have more meaning, so that's why I'm talking about it today. Eventually, if I get shut up and just, yeah, here I go. So, the next co-star is Michelle Dockery, and she plays Alice Fletcher. She is a rancher who's lost 2 husbands, has a son by one that is Native American, or indigenous or Indian, I don't know. There's like a lot of names. I guess it depends on which generation you're a part of. I like to go with Native because they all have something wrong with them, or they could all of the words to indicate the original inhabitants of the United States area can go by a lot of names, and I'm just gonna go with Native because that's the one I feel comfortable with. It is their native land. So at the time that this period piece takes place, the white woman having like no husband, a native half-breed child. That half-breed was like a terrible pejorative. It's not great now, but I mean then it was even worse. I mean, if you think people have no filters now, they would be at home then with their no filters, except okay, no social commentary anymore. Let me just go on with what I'm saying. But she proves to be a very strong woman who she just doesn't take any guff. I love her delivery. I love her portrayal. Alice Fletcher is the actor, and I love her portrayal of this woman because she's so convincing, and she's good. So moving on, and then the next cast member is Bill McNew, and he is a lawman, and he's very earnest, and he's big-hearted, and like everyone in this story from that era, everyone's been through some shit, excuse my language, but it's a hard life, and so many incidental things could end it suddenly. Like disease was so out of control because we didn't understand medicine or sanitation or what we were doing to inflict disease upon ourselves. It was a rough time to be alive, like any time, but it seems like more crazy and savage now. I suspect someone from back in that time, I don't remember the actual years, really close to the 1900s, so moving away from sort of the Wild West atmosphere and more into rolling into the kind of civilization we have today, which I guess I will use civilization lightly to circle back to what I was saying. They, from that previous time, might be completely appalled. Forget the new modern magical technology. The way we treat each other, I think they might be like, do you people just want to constantly just be at each other's throat? Because like at some point there's got to be some trust, or there's got to be a reprieve of just, you know, keeping up the constant anger and hatred and just being like up in the negative side, well, down in the negative side of your feelings. That is just it's hard to be around. It's hard to be doing. Like, even if you can't recognize that you're trapped inside of a sort of a swirl of anger, a storm, a cyclone of your own personal cyclone, it would be hard to see clearly through the mass and the debris flying around you. But it's gotta, I think, start from the inside and then go out. Like, at some point you gotta realize that everything that's bothering you, you are in some way, peripherally or minimally or full on, whatever it is, the thing that's bothering you, you somehow have an attachment or involvement with, and otherwise it wouldn't be affecting you so much. And that is the thing that we go flying past, that we gloss right over, that does require some introspection, because we play a part in everything that happens that we're affected by, that we're aware of the affectation. That is what I'm saying. So if you're there and you're seeing something going on and it's making you feel some kind of way, that's not what's actually happening. Whatever's going on around you is not making you feel any kind of way. Only you can make you feel some kind of way, and only you can prevent forest fires. Pop culture jumbo. So, anyway, I don't know what that had to do. I guess it had to do with this town. Oh, I'm not going to repeat myself, because I think it made sense until I just started doubting what I was saying and becoming jumbled, so I will move on. The character, though, that I was talking about was Bill McNew, and as much as he wants to do his job, he's got a health issue that he thinks is insurmountable. That does not turn out to be the case, as we learn in the story. But he is one of the people, along with Roy Good, the main character. They just have had really hard lives, are having really hard lives, and something I noticed about watching syndicated black and white era TV westerns was how quickly people will they forget about due process and the legal system. It seemed like a lot of the times the sheriff's main job, if they caught a criminal that had done something that the whole town was up in arms about, or up in pitchforks and torches about, is they just wanted to lynch you real fast, or the gunfights in the streets thing, where that whole high noon shootout business with everybody running for the hills and peeking from behind the shutters on the height, that's like a theatrical thing. I'm sure there's an element of truth, but it was not constantly people just walking up and down, guns ablaze all the time, because otherwise nothing would have progressed. Let's face it. People would have run away from these towns and they would not have flourished. Order had to begin to take priority over the Wild West stuff. So I think this is a transitional period that was happening at that time. So you're like you spent half of your life in savagery, kind of, and then also a lot of privation, because not everyone had indoor plumbing or electricity or motorized vehicles to help with the farm work and stuff like that. There was a lot of work to be done. You had to make your own clothes a lot of times. You had to make your own food. You had to grow your food. You had to hunt your food and then get it home and dress it and store it. And the kids had to be educated. Like, there's so much stuff, and God forbid somebody got hurt and maybe broke a limb, and they're like stuck in some canyon where even today they might not have cell service. So it was even worse then, where the quickest way they might find you first is to notice carrion birds circling your location. wouldn't necessarily mean you were dead, but the birds knew, hey, there's a chance. So life was precarious is what I'm saying. And it was also, I feel like in this show, right at the tipping point between the precarious and, you know, the cell phone era, where probably the same signifier to locate you would be the bird, since you couldn't get bars in my imagined scenario here. But just trying to get an understanding of it's the best way I can describe kind of the period in this that the story takes place in. So Bill is played by Scoot McNairy, and Scoot McNairy is a recent new sort of, I guess, crush, like professional crush, not like, ooh, I'm all hot and bothered about the guy. But I don't know when I first became aware of him, because I don't know if it was because I saw him as an actor playing a role and you could see him, and I very well could have, because you don't end up starring in something without having spent years of making appearances where you're not the star, you're the background, you're the character, the non-credited, whatever it is. So he was probably around for a long time. And but the thing about him is that he also does voiceover and narration work, and he's got a great voice for narration. And I am all hot and bothered about that kind of thing right now, because I have all these different influences for speaking, and I mean, I wouldn't mind picking up some voiceover or narration work. So I don't know that that's a thing that'll happen, but it might. You know, like, opportunities and doors are opening all the time for me. So it just, like I said recently, it's just not a bad idea to polish up the skills. And whatever extra arrows you can pack in your quiver is a good thing. So anyway, he's one of my narration heroes, and he was he's the background voice in the Narcos series, because at first there was Narcos, that was about the sort of Colombian cocaine era and the DEA in its infancy, and then the next not season, but I guess the series that grew from it, like sub something, I can't remember the name now, how ridiculous. But anyway, it was Narcos Mexico, and he also did the voiceover for that, but he starred in it as well, so you got to see the person of the voice. And I hadn't made that connection with the voice and the physical person until I saw that, so that was just a big, for me, like, oh, now I know who that voice looks like. It matters to me. And also, I have a lot of respect for the character actor, because some of them are so darn good. Okay, I'm running out of time. I'm not running out of time, but I don't want to take much longer. So, you can go to IMDb, just like I am doing right now and have done, if you want to know the details of who's who on the cast. And I will include in the information box below this video a trailer, so you can get sort of a taste of what I'm talking about. The thing that I have sort of drawn from the story here that I didn't maybe sort of catch on to before, and is the point of why I'm here talking about it, is how it's a story of screwed up men, kind of. And we have we have several layers or levels of screwed up men things happening in our society. Like we have the incels, and they're unhappy, and they have all these problems, and they got a lot to deal with before they can get right with themselves and the world. And there's all these other man eras of experience that everyone else gets to experience too, because that's how life works. But men and women can be very fragile as adults and adolescents, and going all the way back to parents going away, or their marriages shattering, so that basically the young child loses the cohesion of the family unit. They don't have the two parents together doing the work and providing the structure. And even if we don't sort of completely what the hell, you're plugged in. Even if we don't like understand that dynamic really as children, when our parents split up and brings all these changes to the household, it affects us, you know. And we know as children that like something that was right is now sort of torn asunder. And gotta take some of these teeth out. Sorry, but they get a little painful after a while. So the relationship is just fractured. And if you've ever dropped a glass on the floor and seen it break apart, this is what I mean. It's everyone's feelings and all of the things that contributed to the breakup of the parents, and then the child's emotion and their, you know, perception of the events, which is their understanding is unformed. So it just is like loss and trauma and pain to a child. And my parents divorced, my birth parents, but I was too young to remember that. But there was plenty of other stuff reverberating that I remember even from that very young age. And then she remarried and went back and forth with this guy, and that created more problems. And you just, as the child, you see all this, and you see their pain, and you see their confusion, the adults, and you don't know how to process it. You barely know how to process your own stuff. And it just, I'm not saying that it's like the tragedy of the world, because it happens over and over. That just tells me that, not like in the personal sense, when an event recurs over and over and over, and you're like, I can't get out of this rut that's hurting me. We eventually can, because we figure out what's keeping us in the rut. But in this case, you have a gap between understanding with the adults and the kids. So it's hard. So in this show, the character that Jeff Daniels plays, who is named Frank Griffin, well, he's basically an outlaw. And he's one of these guys who's had this fractured upbringing. He's orphaned, I believe, somehow. The story is told in the show, but it's very brief, and it's kind of like a little tiny exposition to like make you aware of like, here's kind of why this guy got a wild hair. And so he grows up fostered variously, and it's not a system, it wasn't a system like we have today. It wouldn't have been, but just as dodgy, because same things were happening. You could end up in virtual slavery. You could end up under some kind of physical abuse or mental abuse, or all of the above. And you don't have much power as a kid, and things can be said about you that aren't true, that make you the villain when you really aren't. And if you can't, as most kids are not able to, articulate what's being done to you, particularly if it's being done to you by an adult and it's all kinds of wrong. This makes no sense to me, but the people will doubt the child who's the most likely to be the honest person, even though we've told ourselves the child is going to lie, the child is going to lie. Well, it depends on the circumstance, if you think about it. So, it's a strange thing that puts this child that's already been traumatized and damaged in a position where if they try to defend themselves, they become the person that is saying and doing the wrong thing, because the adults can't deal with the reality of the situation, and nobody wants to face, if it's not your kid, no one wants to tell some other parent, like, hey, your kid was molested by this person. And if it's a person attached to you, they want to talk about it even less. They're like, people want to hide stuff more than just getting it over with. And as a result, we got a lot of bad stuff that happens between us that we do to each other, societal, like in the societies that we live in, not just in the United States. I mean, broken up families create broken up lives because we're not really equipped as of yet to help reassemble each other or ourselves. So we're just wandering around hurt and messed up and trying to cope and trying to fake it till we make it. And that's what this guy, Frank Griffin, is all about. And he grows up and he's raised by a fundamental religious father that was very cruel, and that God that he espoused was not loving and forgiving. That was a God of vengeance and anger and fear and recrimination. Like, it was just a bad scene. Don't take the bad brown God acid. Like in There Will Be Blood, same kind of crazy father. So Frank Griffin, though, grows up and he's so influenced by this fundamentalist religious upbringing that he takes on the same kind of qualities. So he'll be roaring about scripture and, you know, how everybody else is a sinner, but meanwhile he's shooting people to death and burning down their towns and, you know, just taking the women and having his way with them. And it don't matter if they're attached to a husband or have children or that everybody can see and hear everything, because these people are like making their way on the frontier in this story from whatever city or civilization they're coming from across the Wild West to like make their homestead or to the other next big town and civilization, more or less. And so he takes advantage of he's very astute, and he's one of those people that can read a stranger and know how to press their buttons, and he's manipulative, and in no way is he able to even conceive of the fact that all of the harm that he does to other people, which he does by collecting other orphans and raising boys and raising them to be like, not raising them to be like him deliberately, but just by the fact of their proximity to the man and his like almost absolute control over the people, these young men that he collects. I mean, he's like brainwashing them. That's it. And so they end up growing up as to be adults in his gang, and they become part of the terrorizing and the hell raising, and it's just like it speaks so closely to me of like how these same fractures and traumas can be affecting actual men of actual today. And so even though it's hard to watch, there is a lot of redemption in it. Roy Good, who is one of the young boys that gets collected by Frank Griffin, grows up and I think the whole time realizes that this guy is cracked, and it's just one of those situations where Frank was opportunist and grabbed Roy, but Roy had to grow up within this sort of odd structure and find his own morality, which he does because you can tell that he sees pretty early on that this whole Frank Griffin's pseudo religious preacher man is a bunch of dangerous, brutal BS. And so he finally breaks free of that guy, and the rift between them raises all kinds of hell between here and there in the show. I thought that it's a good way to see abstractly what we're experiencing, and it could apply not just to like incel men. That's almost lazy, but I mean, the story is about men with problems relating to women and the society they live in, so it's hard not to make the comparison. And so I think I've made my point, and I'm about at the time that I want to stop. Thank you and good night.